Have you ever heard of a rebellion so terrifying that it sent shockwaves through an entire nation, forever changing the course of its history? A rebellion led not by a general or a politician, but by an enslaved preacher who believed he was an instrument of God's wrath. Today, we re-delving into the heart of one of the most significant and violent slave revolts in American history. Nat Turner's Rebellion. This is a story of faith, desperation, and the brutal realities of slavery. Story that still echoes in the conversations we have about race and justice today. So, who was Nat Turner? He was born into slavery on October 2nd, 1800 in Southampton County, Virginia. Nat was different from the start. He was deeply religious and he learned to read and write at a young age, which was incredibly rare for an enslaved person at the time. He spent hours poring over the Bible, and his powerful sermons and charismatic personality earned him the respect of his fellow enslaved people, who called him the prophet. From a young age, Turner believed he was destined for a great purpose. He described having visions from God, signs he interpreted as divine commands. He saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle, and drops of blood on the corn like dew. For him, these weren't just dreams, they were prophecies. The world Nat Turner lived in was one of unimaginable cruelty. The institution of slavery in the American South was a system built on brutal exploitation. Enslaved people were considered property, not human beings. They could be bought, sold, and separated from their families at a moment's notice. They worked from sunrise to sunset, under the constant threat of the whip, enduring horrific physical and psychological abuse. There was no legal recourse, no hope for freedom, just a life of forced labor. It was in this oppressive environment that Turner's visions began to crystallize into a plan for liberation. He wasn't just seeking personal freedom. He believed God had chosen him to deliver his people from bondage, just as Moses had done for the Israelites in the Bible. The final signs came in 1831. First, solar eclipse in February, which Turner interpreted as a black hand obscuring the Sunnah, clear signal to prepare. Then, in August, the sun appeared with a strange bluish-green tint, which he took as the final divine go-ahead. The time for waiting was over. The time for action had come. The plan was as desperate as it was deadly, to move swiftly and violently through the Virginia countryside. Gathering followers and striking terror into the hearts of white slaveholders, Turner believed that a swift, shocking display of force would inspire a massive uprising across the state, creating an army of the liberated that could not be stopped. On the night of August 21st, 1831, the rebellion began. Turner gathered a small group of trusted followers, starting with just 6 men. Their first target was the home of his own enslaver, the Travis family. Armed with hatchets and axes, they launched their attack, and from there, the rebellion exploded. For the next 48 hours, Turner and his growing band of rebels, which swelled to over 70 enslaved and free black people, moved from plantation to plantation. They unleashed a wave of violence that Southampton County had never seen. They spared no one in the slave-owning households they targeted, believing that this was the only way to break the chains of oppression. Panic spread like wildfire among the white population as news of the revolt traveled. Families fled their homes, seeking refuge in the woods or fortified towns. The rebellion, however, was short-lived. The initial shock gave way to a massive, organized, and brutal response. Local militias, and eventually state and federal troops, were mobilized to crush the uprising. Turner's forces were outgunned and outnumbered. A final confrontation near the Jerusalem town courthouse ended in a skirmish that scattered the rebels. Many were killed on the spot, while others were captured. The initial rebellion was over in less than 2 days, but the bloodshed had only just begun. Turner himself managed to escape, disappearing into the woods and swamps of Southampton County. For 2 months, he evaded capture, hiding in a small cave he dug himself. It's becoming a phantom figure that haunted the region. While Turner was in hiding, a wave of horrific retaliatory violence swept through Virginia and neighboring states. Enraged white militias and vigilante mobs went on a rampage, killing black people indiscriminately. It didn't matter if they had been part of the rebellion or not. An estimated 200 black individuals, most of whom had nothing to do with the uprising, were murdered in the weeks that followed. This was a reign of terror designed to send a clear and brutal message. Any form of resistance would be met with overwhelming and merciless force. Finally, on October 30th, Nat Turner was discovered by a local farmer and captured. he surrendered peacefully. Taken to the county seat of Jerusalem, which is now Cortland, Virginia, Nat Turner was put on trial. While in jail, he gave a detailed confession to a local lawyer named Thomas Ruffingray. This document, published as the Confessions of Nat Turner, provides most of what we know about his motivations and the events of the rebellion from his perspective. In it, Turner remained defiant and unapologetic. He insisted he was a prophet of God, acting on divine orders. When asked if he now believed he was mistaken, he famously replied, "Was not Christ crucified?" On November 5th, he was tried, convicted of insurrection, and sentenced to death. 6 days later, on November 11th, 1831, Nat Turner was hanged. The aftermath of the rebellion was profound and devastating for Black Americans. Instead of leading to any reflection on the evils of slavery, the revolt terrified white Southerners and caused them to double down on the brutal system. In the wake of the rebellion, states across the South enacted a series of new, draconian laws known as slave codes. These laws made it illegal to teach any black person, enslaved or free, to read or write. They severely restricted the rights of free black people, and they banned black people from holding religious services without a white minister present. The goal was to crush any possibility of a future uprising by controlling every aspect of black life: their education, their religion, and their ability to communicate. The window for a peaceful abolition of slavery, if it ever truly existed, slammed shut. The lines were drawn more sharply than ever, pushing the nation further down the path toward the Civil War that would erupt 3 decades later. Nat Turner remains one of the most complex and controversial figures in American history. Was he a religious fanatic, a brutal murderer, or a freedom fighter who used the only means available to him to fight an evil system? The truth is, he was likely all of these things. His rebellion exposed the unbearable brutality of slavery and the desperate measures that people would take to resist it. It shattered the myth that enslaved people were content with their condition and forced the issue of slavery into the national spotlight in a way that could no longer be ignored. The story of Nat Turner is a difficult but essential part of the American story, a stark reminder of the cost of oppression and the unquenchable human desire for freedom. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into a pivotal moment in history. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Nat Turner's legacy in the comments below. See you next time.